The mop bucket tipped over, and Daniel Reyes dropped to his knees on the marble floor of Kestrel Tower, scrubbing at grey water before it could touch the leather shoes of a man he didn't dare look up at. His hands were shaking. Not from the cold water soaking through his jeans, from hunger. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning, so his daughter could. "Watch where you're going," the man above him snapped, stepping around the mess without breaking stride. Daniel whispered an apology to the floor and kept scrubbing. 3 hours earlier, he'd walked into this building with a resume folded so many times the creases had gone soft, praying for a janitor job that paid $12 an hour. 6-year-old Lily was waiting for him at Mrs. Alvarez's apartment. She had asked him that morning if they could have pancakes for dinner. Daniel had smiled and promised they would. He had no idea how he was going to keep that promise. Worse, the eviction notice taped to his door gave him only 11 days. He didn't know yet that somewhere on the top floor, a billionaire was about to see his name on a piece of paper and stop breathing. If you've ever prayed for a single sign that things were about to change, stay until the end of this one. Daniel Reyes was 34 years old, and by every measure the world used to judge a man, he had failed. Failed marriage. His wife had left 2 years ago, unable to survive raising a special needs child in a 2-bedroom apartment on a warehouse salary. Failed career. The warehouse had shut down in March, and every application since had come back silent. Failed provider. Lily's medication cost more than his last 3 paychecks combined. But there was one thing Daniel had never failed at, and it was the only thing he cared about anymore, loving his daughter. Lily had a heart condition, a soft murmur the doctors watched carefully, and a laugh that made Daniel forget, for 4 or 5 seconds at a time, exactly how frightened he was. That morning, he'd ironed his one collared shirt with a coffee mug filled with hot water because the iron was long gone, sold months ago. He'd walked into the HR office of Kestrel Tower and been told, almost as an afterthought, that the janitorial position had already been filled, but the overnight cleaning crew needed someone immediately, off the books, cash under the table, no benefits. He said yes before she finished the sentence. That was how Daniel Reyes ended up on his knees at 11 p.m., mop in hand, in the lobby of the most powerful company in the Pacific Northwest. A tech and shipping empire called Kestrel Global, owned by a man most employees had never once seen in person. His name was Marcus Kestrel. 39 years old. Worth $11 billion. And, according to every magazine that had ever profiled him, a man with no family, no known parents, and no explanation for how a boy from nowhere had built an empire from nothing. What none of those magazines knew, what no one alive was supposed to know, was the name Marcus Kestrel had been born with. It happened at 11:47 p.m. Daniel had been handed a stack of new hire intake forms by the night supervisor, told to fill them out before his shift officially started, badge photo included. He wrote his information quickly, exhausted, eager to get to the mop closet and start earning the $200 he'd been promised for the night. Name: Daniel Reyes. Previous address: Unit 4B, Alder Street. Emergency contact: Lily Reyes, daughter. Mother's maiden name: Whitfield. He didn't think twice about that last line. It was just a security question. He didn't know that 31 floors above him, an executive assistant named Priya Chen was digitizing intake forms for a routine audit, and that Kestrel Global's system flagged any form containing the surname Whitfield for direct forwarding to the CEO's private terminal. A protocol Marcus had quietly installed himself, 5 years ago, and never told a single person the reason why. Priya didn't think anything of it. She simply hit forward, the way she had 100 times before with 100 forms that meant nothing. But this time, on the top floor, in an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that belonged to him, Marcus Kestrel was still awake, as he always was at midnight, unable to sleep, staring at the framed photograph he kept locked in his bottom desk drawer and never showed to anyone. His phone buzzed. A new hire intake form. He almost ignored it. Then his eyes caught the mother's maiden name field, and his entire body went still. Whitfield. Only one woman had ever carried that name into his life. His mother. The woman who had vanished when he was 7 years old, the night his father, a man Marcus refused to speak of even now, put him in a stranger's car and told him to never say his real name again. The woman he had spent $11 billion and 18 years quietly, secretly searching for, and never once found a trace of. His hands trembled as he scrolled to the emergency contact field. Lily Reyes, daughter. Marcus Kestrel, a man who had negotiated hostile takeovers without blinking, who had once sat across from senators without a flicker of fear, felt the air leave his lungs. Because there, typed in plain black text on a minimum wage janitorial application, was a detail that should have been impossible. Not the daughter's name. The father's date of birth. March 14th. The exact day, the exact year, of a birth Marcus had only ever seen recorded in one place. A sealed adoption file he'd paid 3 separate private investigators to unlock, and every single one had failed. Because Daniel Reyes, mopping a lobby floor 31 stories below him for $200 a night, shared the same birth date as a brother Marcus Kestrel had been told, his entire life, had died before either of them turned 10. Marcus stood up so fast his chair hit the window behind him. "Priya," he said into the phone, his voice barely holding together. "Get me the security footage from the lobby cameras. Right now." The elevator doors opened onto the lobby at 12:03 a.m., and Daniel didn't even hear them. He was on his hands and knees behind the front desk, wiping down a baseboard, humming a tune Lily liked to fall asleep to, when a pair of expensive shoes stopped directly in front of him. He looked up, already rehearsing an apology for being in the way twice in one night. The man standing over him was pale. Not angry. Daniel had braced for angry. This was something else. This was a man looking at a ghost. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, his voice cracking in a way that didn't match the tailored suit, the $11 billion company, the floor that belonged to him. "Daniel. Daniel Reyes, sir. I just started tonight, I'm sorry if I—" "Your mother," Marcus interrupted. "What was her name? Before she married? Before any of it?" Daniel blinked, mop still in hand, water dripping onto the marble. I don't know. She died when I was 3. My dad never talked about her. I was raised in foster care until I aged out at 18. He said it the way people say things they've grown numb to repeating. "Why are you asking me this?" Marcus reached into his jacket with a shaking hand and pulled out his phone. He turned the screen around. It was a photograph, decades old, water-damaged at one corner. A woman with tired eyes and a soft smile, holding 2 boys. One maybe 7, the other barely a toddler, both boys looking at the camera like they trusted the whole world. Daniel's mop clattered to the floor. He knew that photograph. He had one just like it, the only possession he'd carried through 6 foster homes, hidden in the lining of an old backpack, too faded now to make out any faces at all. He had never told anyone what it meant to him, because there was no one left to tell. "Where did you get that?" Daniel whispered. "She's my mother too," Marcus said. "I was told you died. I was 7 when they split us up. I don't even know why. I've spent 18 years trying to find out, and they told me my baby brother didn't survive the year. I believed it. I built an entire company trying to numb myself from believing it." The lobby was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint drip of the overturned mop bucket. "I don't understand," Daniel said, his voice breaking. I'm a janitor. I clean toilets for $200 a night so my daughter can afford her medication. He gestured helplessly at the marble, the gold elevator doors, the entire tower rising into the night sky above them. "You're Marcus Kestrel." "I'm your brother," Marcus said. "Before I was anything else." What followed wasn't a fairy tale ending delivered in an instant, because real stories, the ones that matter, never work that way. There was a DNA test 3 days later, the results read aloud over the phone with both men too afraid to breathe. There were hours of sitting in Marcus's penthouse, 2 grown men piecing together fractured childhoods, a father who had gambled away everything, a mother who died of an illness no one had the money to treat, a system that had scattered 2 brothers into different states and told each of them a comforting lie so no one would come looking. Marcus had spent his entire adult life turning grief into ambition, building an empire out of the hole a missing brother had left in him. Daniel had spent his life just trying to survive it, homeless at 19, a warehouse job at 22, a marriage that broke under the weight of medical bills, a daughter with a heart condition and a father who would mop 1,000 floors before he'd ever let her go without. Neither of their pain cancelled out the others. That was the part that made grown men in the comments cry, Not that one brother was rich and one was poor, but that both of them had been alone in completely different kinds of darkness for 18 years, and neither ever stopped, somewhere underneath it all, missing a person they'd been told was gone. Lily met her uncle for the first time on a Tuesday afternoon, in a hospital cardiology wing Marcus had quietly bought out for the day so she could see the country's top pediatric specialist without a single second of a waiting room. She didn't understand billionaires or boardrooms. She understood that her dad was crying happy tears for the first time in her whole life, and that was enough for her to decide she liked this new uncle immediately. Daniel didn't take the money at first. He refused it for almost a month, too proud, too used to relying only on himself. It wasn't the mansion or the company shares that changed his mind. It was Marcus, standing in Daniel's cramped apartment, looking at Lily's medical bills spread across the kitchen table, saying quietly, "Let me be your brother. Not your boss. Not your rescuer. Just let me show up, the way I should have gotten to for 18 years. Daniel didn't clean toilets after that night. But he didn't disappear into luxury either. He took a role inside Kestrel Global's new community outreach division, built specifically to help single parents find real, livable wage work. He knew, better than anyone in that building, exactly what it felt like to be invisible. And every single night, no matter how late the board meetings ran, Marcus Kestrel made time for one thing. Dinner with his brother and his niece, in a home with no cameras, no headlines, no empire, just three people who had finally stopped being alone. If this story moved you even a little, that's exactly why it needed to be told. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a like if you believe family finds its way back no matter how long it's been apart, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in Daniel's shoes on that lobby floor? We'll see you in the next story.